Hello and welcome back to the Cardboard Herald, my chance to talk with creative gamers and game creators. As always, I'm your host, Jack, and today I have multiple game creators, game designers, creative gamers with me here. I have Tristan Hall and Mark Chaplin over there in England, much later at night than I am here in my Alaskan morning. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hello there, thanks for having us.
Yes, happy to be here.
Well, I'm happy.
Should I distinguish that this is Tristan and the other one is Mark?
That may be helpful. Yeah.
I'm the one that's just getting over man flu, so you might be able to hear that in my voice.
He's the one with the husky, dulcet tones.
It's not through smoking cigars, I can assure you.
Well, the reason I have both of you guys on the show is not just because I wanted to double up on interviews here. It's that you guys are partnering together to release a game here soon, or hopefully release it. Coming soon to Kickstarter is going to be Lifeform, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It's a project I'm really excited about because it's the first one that I'm going to be kickstarting that I didn't design. The creative genius behind this project is Toby Ferrans, who's Mark Chaplin's co-designer, and Mark Chaplin himself, who obviously we've got on. And I've been a big fan of Mark's over the years. He released a game. It was like a P&P game, an Aliens. This Time It's War, it was called. A 2-player card game that recreated the movie Aliens, one of the best movies ever made. And Mark made this fantastic.
Agreed. Agreed on not the game, but on the movie. Yeah.
Well, Mark made this brilliant card game, which I played to death, and of course that got re-released officially, actually published without the IP. It was switched out to a Wild West theme as Revolver, which obviously was the same mechanics and everything, so it's still a brilliant game. And he's done another bunch of games in the meantime as well. He also did Invaders, which is an alien invasion game. And so obviously I've been following Mark over the years. We've sort of developed a relationship over Board Game Geek, chatting and shooting the crap at the games expos and stuff like that. But one project he'd been working on over the years and teasing sort of tidbits about was, of course, Lifeform. And when I heard about it, I was instantly intrigued, initially completely as a gamer. I just wanted to play it. It sounded amazing. And it was basically his version of the Alien movie. Anyway, as things progressed, we found ourselves at Hall or Nothing, or I found myself in a position where we had the space and the opportunity to sort of expand a little bit and look at our slate and growing the business a little bit and taking on new projects. And the first of these new projects is going to be Lifeform. So I talked to Mark about it, and I said, who you're getting it published with. And I guess, Mark, you'll be able to shed some more light on this, but you were kind of between publishers at that point in time. So we came to an agreement.
We'd had some offers.
Yeah. So I sort of elbowed my way into those offers, I guess, and I made him an offer he couldn't refuse.
Yeah, well, as a film geek, which I know you are, we established that on the last podcast that you were on. I can imagine that you were just champing at the bit in order to get something that, if not including the IP, at least is a loving homage to Alien. I think that's a good area to start here. Is either one of you, or Mark, since you're actually the designer, you can speak more to this. Can you give me a little bit more context on Lifeform itself? I know it's this loving homage to Alien, but what exactly is the structure of the game? Is this a dungeon crawl? Is this an asymmetric single battle game? Is this a betrayal game? What is it?
It's up to 4 players. It's an asymmetric team game where one of the teams is the almost invincible, utterly hostile alien life form. And the other players are the other team. They're the under-equipped, panic-stricken crew of a commercial mining starship. The goal, obviously, for the crew is to refuel, re-equip the shuttlecraft and try to escape the mining starship before it explodes. And basically, the alien is trying to do everything it can to make sure that doesn't happen. That's the overview of the game. It's taken many years to get to this point, and as I just mentioned, we Toby and I had some offers from many companies, actually, nibbles here and there, Ares Games being one of them and what have you. The idea was always to do it as a fait accompli, as in get everything, because I'd had some experience with traditional publishing in the game world. The one thing you learn is that obviously not only that there's good points, like them being a quality filter, etc., but the bad points being that they always want to change something, which is why many people, I guess, go to Kickstarter. But the idea was that we'd get 90% of the art of that done up front, and then maybe go to Kickstarter, but probably not ourselves, but go to somebody with more experience in that field. And Tristan, in many ways, actually, the long gestation of the game, like the Alien, has worked in our benefit. Is that Tristan had gained a lot of experience, and he came along and he said, "Why don't we do it together?" And so that's where we are now. We might have gone with a traditional publisher, but that's not the way it worked out. That they wanted some changes made, and Tristan didn't really want to make those changes. So, so we are where we are. It's been a very long journey, but I get the game actually is better for it. That's one of those things where if you're working on something for years and you keep coming back to it, when you take a small break and you go back, you think, what the hell were we thinking with that? And so you add things in or you take things out, and hopefully over the years it's certainly a lot better than what it originally was. And I mean, it's had many evolutions. So it's an exciting time. So the game. One of the worries I've always got with the game taking so long to come out is other games will come out that steal its thunder, or there'll be things similar, or let's say we had some really unique, mechanisms or levers, and then other games have already done it. But luckily, though there's been some giant miniature games in the same genre of sci-fi horror, none of them have stolen our thunder, which is quite surprising, though time's catching up. Somebody's going to try something similar. They're bound to. But, what the main uniqueness of the game is the one versus many. I mean, there's lots of games that do that, like Descent, second edition, or even first edition. Any of those, there's a huge slew of games that do that, but they always have whoever's like the dungeon master or the evil player, if you will. In this, it's the alien. They've always got many foes to match up against. The many players. Even Imperial Assault does the same thing. But there's only ever one alien. And that, I've got to say, that's incredibly hard to pull off, because that's why it took so long to get right. Even though the alien has false sensor readings around the ship, there's only ever one threat. So that's what makes the game unique. It never has offspring. You'll never, it's the easiest thing in the world to make a game where many well-equipped crew are fighting against many aliens. Anybody can design that. So that's that's me waving my flag of trying to come up with what was unique about the game. So hopefully I've got that across. But
that's really interesting. I'm wondering though, like I'm trying to conceptualize how this would actually work, because part of Alien to me, which is a movie that I've watched so many times in my life, Alien and Aliens are probably among the two movies that I've seen the most in my life, being exposed to them far too young, because I had a single dad who was like, yeah, I'm sure he's fine. He's 5 years old. He can watch these. And so I've grown up with a lot of affection towards them, but Alien in particular is such a striking movie because it manages to have such a tension and suspense throughout the entire thing. And if you try and imagine seeing it for the first time, which is very hard for me to do, you don't actually see the alien until the very end. And that's part of what keeps it incredibly scary, is you don't even know what this thing that they're up against is. And I'm wondering, in a board game, how do you keep the suspense for the crewmates with the alien on the table? Are they like operating on some hidden movement mechanism? How do you create this fear that something could be around any corner?
Obviously, you can only recreate so far a board game experience compared to a movie. And, I completely agree with what you say about Alien. Though I would add the director's cut ruins that by showing the alien about an hour in but I'm diverging off the path there. The core mechanism keeps the movement bluff mechanism going, but is different from Fury Dracula or Whitechapel or any of those other games or there's another one as well, Last Friday, that comes to mind, where you have to record the movement down or have a screen where you're moving behind. This one, you're moving sensor ghosts or blips, if you like, and only the alien player, he's using, a series of tokens to represent which is the true threat. So he'll be moving multiple alien sensor ghosts, but only one of them is real. And the crew, only when they interact with the blips do they find out whether it was nothing, just shadows or an anomaly on the sensor readout, or it's the actual alien. Now, when that occurs, obviously the bluff is revealed, but the blips are then repositioned in what we called in the rules a reality calibration. And then the alien is then reassigned secretly again to one of either the same one or, to one of the bluffs. That way, there's no record keeping, and there's less chance of somebody, like it's very possible in Fury Dracula, as a Dracula player, to screw up the entire game by buggering it up, by not accurately recording where you were or making a massive mistake. There's big pressure on that player too. All of that's been removed in this game. So the alien is only in either 2 or 3 positions throughout the game. There's only so much you can do without atmospheric music or an app. But anyway, that's the way that we do it in this.
That's awesome.
Because to pitch in on that as well, as from the crew's point of view, first of all, you never know where the alien is, but the life form, sorry. But it also moves through the vents really quickly. It has a series of cards that they can play to move, like jump on the crew when they thought they were safe. There's areas on the board, the vents where the crew can go through that sort of make their lives easier in terms of getting to the objectives faster. But if they're in the vents, the life form can just pop up at any time depending on their card play. So you never, as the crew, safe. You never feel secure. You're always, the thing is always around the corner. And it's one of the most elegant and ingenious mechanics of the game. That was certainly one of the things that really drew me to it as well.
Yeah, that's totally awesome, because I love when board games have this perfect thematic resonance within mechanical design. So when you are using these blips here to represent the alien, that works perfectly thematically. Like you easily, in fact, more easily understand the mechanisms of the game because you can think of it in thematic terms, even though it is very much a mechanical solution to a problem or a challenge in designing a game. And that's some of the best things about board games, I think, in particular in the last maybe 5 or so years, is that there's been so much emphasis on really good solutions that are intuitive because of their thematic nature, even though they are inherently really crunchy mechanical design. So that's awesome. And as fans of this genre, I imagine in general, not just this specific movie, what are the tones that you were really wanting to capture in this game? Like, what's the pervasive feeling that you think is going to be unique about playing this game and the session of this game, the story that people are going to remember playing compared to other games that are on the market right now?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because it isn't a storytelling game, but narrative beats do pop up. Not just because of, you've moved into the ore refinery and that the aliens attacked you. There's certain, as the game progresses, the alien lays, people tend to call them traps, but they're classed as like terror. And there's a unique deck of, crisis type events that occur that are all in favor of the alien. But what I'm trying to get is they all add a narrative beat, like, you've encountered a fire, so do you want to activate the fire suppression system, or does the alien get some advantage? There's 40-odd unique crises that occur that not all of them are to do with the alien, where you discover the dead bodies of other crew members that have been killed before the game begins. Because our game, obviously, it's not 100% alien, but even if it was, the game has started an hour into the movie because we haven't, found where you've got the alien from or any of that. The alien is on board. It's nearly mature. And the crew are, so obviously, and the other thing that was difficult about balancing it, really, the ship is a sandbox. You know what your objectives are, but you've got to get to it, and how you get to it, will on the way you discover that there's a malfunction on the shuttle, or an event could be that there's some coolant there's so many different things that could pop up, but generally the players create their own narrative. Oh my God, somebody's run into a certain chamber and the alien attacks them. And because there's certain thematic decisions that have big meaning mechanically, where the alien, when it does any kill, can decide to do a silent kill or a noisy one, drag somebody into an air shaft, as it were. And the silent kill keeps the board state as it is. A noisy one means that all the crew have to panic, but that's not necessarily advantageous for the alien always. So the alien's got to make a decision there, and things like that occur. And just little wrinkles like that spread throughout the game tend to make a narrative. And not trying to beat a thematic, not a drum of my own making. But one of the benefits of this type of board game compared to, say, a more traditional one where you're just collecting victory points, I'm not trying to diss those type of games, but they don't have the narrative like awesome source that as you're playing it, you go, oh, I've gained a couple of victory points here, or I've gained, but where this game, you're like, oh, I've done something, I flamed an alien, and then I've quickly ran into, the infirmary and things like that. So players tell their own story. I don't know, the post-mortems afterwards, I'll leave that for people to write their own session reports, I guess. But when I've observed people play testing it, they beat to beat, they make their own, the game makes its own stories. That was one of the things that I wanted. I want people to write interesting session reports. You think there's one of those things, meta elements. We think, what could I put in that would make it more interesting to tell a story about it? Thought long and hard about that, but obviously it's only a board game, so we'll see whether we've succeeded in that or not. There's a lot in it, and one of the strengths is it plays in about an hour and a half, where most heavily thematic games seem to take all evening. That's brilliant if you've got 3-4 hours, but sometimes it's nice to play 2 games in an evening and somebody changes roles, so I don't know if I've completely answered your question, but when you've got the time pressure of where the self-destruct has already been started at the game's beginning, that's got pressure. It forces people to do things they wouldn't normally do. I mean, in many games you've got time constriction, but ever so more so when you've got an alien beating down on you, possibly a homicidal android, and you've only got 10 minutes and 6 Tristan, and you've got 6 chambers to get to the shuttle, and maybe there's a coolant leak between you, and then you're like, how am I going to do this? And that's where you have situations like in the playthrough where the players decide to leave somebody behind, which is heavily penalized in the game, but it makes for an interesting story moment. You don't have to get everybody off. You can just abandon some of the crew behind on the mining starship, but that leads to a different playable ending. So
there's a couple more experiential elements as well about the game that I think are unique and would make it really difficult for you to just pick up and retheme to any other sort of game, because they're so inherently driven by the story of the Lifeform game. One of them is the map itself. The map of this huge labyrinthine spaceship is amazing. It's like it's a jaw dropper when you see it, and navigating your way through that as the crew, trying to pick up your objectives and thread your way through the maze to get to the shuttlecraft is a huge part of the game. But also the Lifeform itself is almost invincible, which you can never really stop it. All you can do is push it back. You might flame an alien, but all it's going to do is move back and get angry.
That feels like a proverb or a life lesson right there. You may flame an alien, son, but all you're going to do is push it back and it'll get angry.
Yeah, you just don't see that in games where you've got an invincible foe. Mm-hmm. So, but obviously that created problems that were interesting to overcome. How do you make playing something invincible fun for the players up against it, and how do you make it so that if by stopping that alien, how do you make it so that the alien doesn't feel like I'm supposed to be super powerful, but I can't get anything done, So it was an interesting thing of pulling different levers until you hit the sweet spot where the Invincible felt pretty powerful but couldn't do everything they wanted, and the crew that shouldn't be able to do anything because they're space miners against almost a godlike foe didn't feel like, well, there's no point in doing anything, who's going to win, That was the hardest thing, I think, was trying to get that, and in a sandboxy way and with no dice, deterministic conflict system. And the other thing we wanted from the beginning was no hit points, either obviously not for the alien and none for the crew. So if you can't fend off the alien in an attack, you're dead. I don't mean you're out of the game. Your character dies. If you were going to write a mission statement for the game, that was on it. No hit points.
Do you want to talk about the player elimination as well, Mark? How you've handled that with the...
Yeah, no, I thought originally when I first conceived it, I thought maybe it's too funky and people are going to laugh or think it's stupid. But actually, it turned... people have seemed to have received it well. I'm sure some people might not, but yeah, everybody. So I'll give you an example. Say we're playing 4 players. That's the maximum, where you've got 1 player's the alien, the other 3 are the crew. All the crew players start with 2 mining crew each. So that would be 6 mining crew against 1 alien in a 4-player session. Now, as the alien's killing the crew, remember there's no hit points, so the crew slowly whittle down. But then if you're out of crew, then there's 2 secondary roles that you can take, and you get to choose. So one is the starship's mainframe computer, and the other is the ship's cat. And both have got their own action deck of cards, which are completely different from each other and don't do anything really that any of the other crew do or any of either role does. So they're quite different. The ship's cat moves around the ship and has to get off as well, which might seem daft to some, but obviously that was the same as Ripley trying to get Jonesy off the Nostromo. And the mainframe computer, in our fluff, it was basically dealing with some kind of virus the android had uploaded, and only clears its way ahead so it can action protocols and stuff at the moment that somebody takes the secondary role. So by having 2 secondary roles in a 4-player game, if 2 of the players have lost all their characters, one would be the cat, one would be the mainframe computer. And then this is where the narrative kicks in, the high point. The other player probably would be playing one member of crew that's aided basically by the cat, which isn't superpowered at all. It more uncovers things or annoys the alien, it distracts the alien, etc., where the mainframe computer can close and open doors, electrify things, switch the gravity on and off, the kind of things you would expect a computer uploads data to the shuttle to help for later. And so you end up with one character running around with a flamethrower with the other players trying to help him get off, because as I said at the beginning, it's a team game. So the crew only have to win if there's one lone survivor. And so far everybody seems to, a lot of people like playing the ship's cat, actually, where that was the one I thought people won't mind playing a mainframe computer where you haven't got a character in play, but a lot of people tend to like the cats. Not so much they will commit suicide to play it, but they're like, hey, I want to that would maybe there would be a problem in the game there, but it changes the dynamic of the game, because those characters don't always come up.
Right.
And when they do, maybe there's only one, and you don't know whether people are going to choose the computer or the other. And so that means that every game, it really does up the replayability. So in our playthrough video, that never happened. That's just the way it was. I wasn't good enough as the alien. But obviously some games, the alien kills everybody, and that's great.
And there's 9 unique crew members as well who have their own set of abilities. So you'll always get a different loadout each time you play.
Oh, that's
awesome. I mean, the replayability on it is huge.
Does
game, like Mark says, because it plays in like 90 minutes, the second it's finished, you're like, I want more. So you can just load it up and start again. Which for a game that delivers that kind of heavy experience, it's quite unique.
Is there any variability in what the alien has as far as like loadouts for different games? If you're the person who's playing the alien more often than not, is there something to give you a little bit more variety each game?
the Alien has got a unique action deck, and generally speaking, they don't get through their deck every game, so they might handle the way they perform their actions differently.
Mhm.
But also, they've got three unique powers, and they can only use one per game. So that has given them a one-use trait that would mean that, one game they might decide to do a hull breach, or another game they decide to do something more with the homicidal android. I mean, there's
I love that.
You can. Yeah, the alien isn't controlling the android, but the alien player is. But there's three main thrusts of the game for the alien, and every game the alien tries to kill the crew or thwart them, but they can either cocoon. The other main thing the android can do, the alien to do, is cocoon, which is basically evolve or metamorphosize into a higher being, as if it could get more powerful, or have the android malfunction in more dramatic ways. But not every game does somebody decide to do the android, or cocoon, which is the metamorphosis really of the alien. So, I mean, some games the alien player decides to do all three, but it doesn't happen in every game. So that gives them, there's different avenues of play style that are catered for. So there's no different character sheet at the moment. I mean, I've been thinking there's possibility for something like that in an expansion, but at the moment, it's been very difficult to balance it when every game you might have a completely different alien.
Yeah, for sure.
Though it's got enough variation in what it can do. That's one of the things, I can't see getting playing, because the alien's always going to be adaptive, as in there might be 6 different crew moving around. Every game people move around the starship in a different way because there's different objectives dealt out. So the alien is never going to attack or do things in the same way. It won't necessarily kill everybody silently, but some games it does. Or some games it wants to pull everybody screaming into an air shaft. So compared to, say, Fury of Dracula or for Last Friday, the slasher basically does the same thing every game, just tries to do it better. The one thing we haven't mentioned about the alien, its character sheet is basically, it's got hostility tracker, which tracks how angry can you make it during the game. The idea being, I mean, it was obviously an alien. It was completely hostile from the get-go, and so as it is in this game. But you had to have a mechanism whereby the alien player felt like they were getting somewhere even when they weren't. So, every time you went to attack somebody, they jabbed you with a cal prod, or you were continually getting flamed. And this is where the hostility track comes in. So
right.
Every time the crew do something directly to you that would annoy the player mainly, but also damage or, in normal games would hurt the alien. In this one, it makes it stronger. It's the opposite to what you would normally have happen. So, and on that track are various trigger points that either make it a lot more efficient if there's a battle on the shuttle, which we haven't talked about, or there's a couple of draw card spots, which are just useful because normally the alien has to lurk to draw cards as a hand management thing there. It draws cards in a different way than the crew. Or mainly, it spreads terror. Which is basically these traps, or like crisis choke points on the map that appear during the game. The alien player places them where they think is where the crew are going to move into. So there's a lot of variability built into the basic. We've a lot of Kickstarters, or some, you certainly get the feeling that people have took stuff out to make the Kickstarter more awesome. But I can tell you, we couldn't have stuffed anything more in the main game. If anybody accuses us of doing that, they don't know what they're talking about. So there is more than you would get in more thought and more game built into the basic. And then we preserve a whole spread of things that we're hopefully adding on, depending on whether there's stretch goals. But there's not in my mind. I mean, obviously Tristan and I have talked about what you could do in an expansion, but I've got to tell you, most of the brilliant stuff that I could think of is already in it, and that's basically the point we're at. I mean, obviously we'll see how it's received. It's too early to talk about an expansion, but certainly we've not kept, that great idea. Let's keep that back to stretch goal. That's not how this has worked. We'll try to make it as an exciting experience as you can get straight out of the box.
Well,
so hopefully other people think that way.
I just want to pivot a little bit and talk not just the design, but the designers and the designing and production of the game. So I guess first off, Tristan, you're used to putting out your own designs. How has your role kind of evolved for this? And how are you liking being the producer versus the director, so to speak?
Yeah, no, it's a very different role, and I like the fact that part of being English is having like a chip on your shoulder about selling yourself, and I find it a lot easier to talk and praise Mark's design than I would if it was my own. Like I'd be more self-critical of my own thing. So, and having played it and being a huge fan of it, you know, there's nothing not to like about it. So, as long as we can transmit that to our backers. I think it's going to go great guns, really. It was really important for me in terms of my company to sort of develop as well and grow that. And I was conscious of the fact that I'm not going to be able to churn out a game every 6 months kind of thing, whilst I'm also juggling the logistics of fulfilling projects and managing manufacturers and artists and everything else. So it was very much on the cards that we wanted to start bringing other games to market and games that we were interested in as well. So we've been looking at some older titles and potentially re-releasing those under our banner, as long as they fit like our sort of thematic, exciting adventure type game world, the sort of games that we produce, then brilliant. But the great thing about Lifeform is that we've come to the table when it's already ready. Mark's got all the art ready, the graphic designs in place. The game is tight as hell. There's loads of scope for the designs and the expansions and everything. So from my point of view, it was kind of like a no-brainer. If it was something I was passionate about playing as a player, and that's how I got started designing my own games anyway. The reason I designed Gloom and Killforth was because I wanted to play D&D in one evening, you know, and nothing else out there did that at that time. So that was my motivation for it. And my motivation, again, is the same. I want to play Lifeform. I want to see it, you know. So, and I think there's a lot of other gamers out there like me that have similar tastes and everything, and like Mark as well. So, you know, it seemed like a marriage made in heaven, you know, so long as he doesn't become like a prima donna and, you know, start asking for his own trailer. But no, I mean, it's great. We're friends and everything. We've gamed together and stuff. So it just seems like a really good opportunity to expand the number of games that are on the market, bring in quality games to market that do something unique. You know, I've certainly not played anything like it that distills. Mark was talking earlier about the hidden movement stuff that you get in games like Fury of Dracula and that. And there can be a pain in the neck from a logistical perspective. And this it does away with all of that, but brings the same tabletop experience, but more complete and more lucid. So the alien player is not scratching his head every turn. He just wants to get on with the actions that he can do, you know, and enact his plans and start cocooning and leveling up or chasing after the crew and everything. So it's a really fun game. And that's absolutely what I want to do with my business moving forward, is bring games like this to the market. You know, if I could design one and release one of somebody else's, you know, and alternate like that moving forward, that'd be fantastic for me as a gamer and as a designer. I get to tick both those boxes.
Well, Mark, what about you and the development of this game? What was the genesis? Were you and Toby there from the beginning in the design, or did one of you kind of get started with it and then someone else came along? What's the story of Lifeform?
Yeah, it goes back many years. I wanted to design an Alien game basically first, before I did anything else. And I quickly realized that was folly. And then I ended up doing an Aliens game, basically for the reasons that I'd already mentioned. It's very, very difficult to get the experience that I wanted. And so I chose the easy path. Many foes against many, you know, good guys. And also the reason I did, I mean, this was back when print and play games were, you know, a big thing. Now nobody seems to really do a great deal of that. It's more Kickstarter, isn't it? So I did an Aliens game. Then, you know, I did some of the other games that got published through traditional publishers, as Tristan's mentioned. And then I thought, I've got to go back to Alien again. Plus the fact it was a thing where it'd been mentioned many times that I was the guy that just designed 2-player card games. And so I thought, well, I'll do Alien. It'll definitely be on a board. and it won't just be 2-player. So anyway, so I started it, and as I said, it went through different evolutions. It started off as a deck builder, but now everybody's like, "Oh, deck builder, we've seen that 1,000 times." Well, yeah, but the thing was, when I started that, there was basically Thunderstone wasn't even there was like Dominion and nothing else. And mine had, what was the unique point of mine at that time was the cards were on all the rooms. It was a lot smaller starship, and it was this was a couple of years before Martin Wallace's A Study in Emerald did the similar kind of thing, where you visited a location and then got the card that was in the location. And obviously that's become a thing now, much bigger than then. But as it turned out, I just didn't like the feel it gave me, where the alien was deck building and the players were deck building. And so I thought, no, this is no bloody good. So that went. Deck building just didn't seem to go well with it. Maybe in an alternative universe, there's a singing, sweet version deck building alien game, but I couldn't. It just didn't do what I wanted it to do. Anyway, so it developed, it came on. Friends of mine tried an early design after that. No, that was rubbish as well. So I trashed that. I even had it where the alien killed people before the game began, and that was part of the game, like a mini game at the beginning, almost like who got impregnated by the alien and all of that. But the thing is, you always wanted to get to the good stuff, don't you? So why play through the half an hour? I mean, the bits I like most about Alien, in fact, are probably the world building that they don't tend to do very much now, like the 45 minutes before anything really happens in Alien. I love all that. But that you don't need that in a board game. But the early version of the board game had that. So you were on the planet, you did the stuff, then you came back up. And probably somebody's going, no, that would be an amazing start to the
someone
game.
is listening to this and is like, are you kidding me? We need the economic mining competitive Euro game. That's the prequel to this, and that's going to lead into this.
That's what expansion should do. Add more time and more bloat. So that's down the road, right? But anyway, it evolved. I had a much larger map. That's when Toby came on. That was a couple of years in, and Toby's much brighter than me. He's not joined us today. He's very ill, obviously, unfortunately. I needed somebody. I knew what I wanted to get done, but I needed somebody else to chop off some of the rough edges. And he was great at distilling, certain elements of it. We had some fabulous rows over it, as you do, when your two creative forces smash into each other. And part of the frustration of the early part of that period of the design was didn't have an end game, didn't even have a last third of the game, but still had people play test it, which probably a lot of people would say, don't do that. But I'd say to them at the beginning, right, I don't have an ending. I don't even have the last third, right? I don't even know how some of this is going to work, but I know that if you experiment enough within the starship, eventually I'll have it figured out. I don't mean by the end of the time they played that. I meant I'm just going to make 1,000 notes, So,
it's like Freeform Jazz, the board game, We're just going to figure it out, just kind of play in this space with some mechanisms, and then we'll actually shape it into something as we go.
I don't know how much fun it was. I can't bottle what fun they had, but I had a riot, right? Because it was making it up as you went along. And obviously, at some point, you've got to lock it down, and then you make smaller adjustments as you go forward, because otherwise you get the butterfly effect. But the initial thing of it was just all wildly veering from one thing to the next. It was a lot of fun, though I wouldn't advise it. It takes forever to do that. But I knew that I couldn't. Sometimes it's very difficult to go, here's a board game I'm designed, complete, and I know it's not ready. Let's it needs tightening up, and then play that. Not with this type of game. It just couldn't be done. I just could not conceive of how to get every system to work from the off, have it all done, and then go, play that, and I'm going to fine tune it. It just couldn't be. So stuff just got added as it went along. So that's my scatterbrained approach. Toby helped massively in nailing that down. It wouldn't be as good as it is now without his pulling on the reins, as it were. And also, obviously, we'd spend great times arguing about Prometheus into the late hours. So, which is,
an argument,
a burning hatred of mine that I'll keep, in my clenched fist until I die. We've almost got a rule now where we're never to mention the P movie.
Yeah.
So
I can imagine the arguments are largely centering around why would a scientist just sit there and poke this thing, or why isn't someone just running to the right or left of the giant metal ring rolling towards them?
Do not start me on that film. It's a fool's errand. Hopefully,
Ridley Scott swings for the fences, and he makes beautiful movies these days. We could at least leave it at that.
Prometheus looks amazing.
Yep.
And some of it I really like. Some of it I like, but the exploding head, forget it. Loads of stuff in it I hate. The deacon at the end, I hate it. I was like shouted at the screen at the end of the movie. A big group of us went and were like, "What? You sequel baiting me, you bastards? What's this?" But that was the least of it.
Michael Fassbender was at least really awesome. That was a cool aspect of the movie. I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. But the weakest thing about it was the ties to Alien, I thought.
Yeah, for sure.
If it had been standalone, it would have been a great movie.
Yeah, I think so. Or maybe just very, very loose ties. You could have, Whalen Corp in there, something that had just little tiny threads that had connective tissue and then largely was not trying to explain origins or the genesis or the Prometheus of things. But you guys have this mutual interest in this game being successful. But, this is a one versus all game. And there have been many one versus all games that have come out over the years, but it feels like that is becoming more and more of a niche thing, and more of the one versus all games are developing alternate modes of play where it can be done as a fully cooperative game, either through apps or having some sort of AI element.
Like Mansions of Madness second edition and that.
Exactly. Did you feel like the current tabletop gaming hobby environment, like it's a risky maneuver to put out a game nowadays that's a one versus all thing without some sort of alternate method of play? Or have you even considered the idea of creating some sort of AI alien element for people who just are done playing one versus all games?
Tristan?
Mark, do you want to talk about the...
you're both looking to each other like, you guys, you take this one.
Let me talk about it first then, because this is the first consideration for all my games is, will it play solo? Mark and I have been chatting about this for months, really. And I always think, A, it's a brilliant way to learn the game, but B, it's a huge market now. Can you play the game solo? So we talked about it, went back and forth, and Mark had some interesting ideas about how that would pan out. Anyway, he came over to us for a gaming weekend. We broke out Lifeform. We played that through. And then after everybody else had gone, he ran me through the solo mode and what he'd come up with. And it's fantastic. It's like it's a whole separate, bespoke, like unique experience that recaptures everything that happens in the multiplayer game with an AI alien that you're up against. And
it's not a good way to learn. It's not a good way to learn the main game, though.
It's not. It's not a good way to learn the main game of Lifeform because it's a different experience altogether. But it does use all the same components. So you're still following the same narrative. You're traveling around the ship. You're picking up the supplies to load up the shuttle, and the Lifeform is constantly on your tail through a different set of mechanics. But it is a very polished and very different experience from the main game in that you still experience the pressure as a solo player. You still experience the pressure of being a hopeless mining crew survivor trying to get off this ship without getting eaten along the way. And I think, how many times did I die, Mark?
Yes, it's pretty tough. It's pretty tough. I find it hard. So it's a very difficult thing to make sure that, you don't want it impossible that people don't think they've got a chance, but also you want them to, keep having another go, don't you? And as to your question, obviously a legacy of designing a game that started 5 or 6 years ago. Yeah, it's one versus many, though, unless you had an app controlling it, you don't get that experience of, one player, the deviousness of the human mind, as an opponent moving against you. Even with an app, you still haven't got the fun factor of some of your friends, versus another. Though I get that some people like a fully co-op experience. Tristan and I have done some talking about that, but as the Kickstarter won't include anything that can do that. It will have the solo, but it cannot be retooled up, not to my satisfaction, to be a full co-op. It would need considerable retooling to do so. It's not impossible, but not within the scope of the Kickstarter. So people have to, like, you're right. There's a Venn diagram of people who don't like one versus many in that, but I'm afraid that's the quadrant we're in, isn't it?
Yeah, and I don't know that it's necessarily a case of not liking one versus many. I mean, I like a lot of one versus many games, but I know that personally, as probably the alpha gamer, if anything, in my group, the one who learns all the rules, who has the games, that kind of thing, then most often when playing some of my favorite games, like I'll take Middle-earth Quest, for example. It's a one versus all game that's completely unlike any other one versus all games I've ever played. But the one, Sauron, is inherently more complex or more difficult in order to run that than the others. And so it's expected that I would be that person because I own the game, I know the rules, and I would be sitting in that seat. And there's a part of me that's like, but I like the good guys. I want to be the good guys. And so having the option of being able to help facilitate the game as the person most experienced, but at the same time being on the side of the angels, so to speak. Well, I guess in a mining operation, it's probably more morally gray than strictly good versus evil. But, having the ability to be on that side and still help kind of facilitate the game and be the MC for the game as it's going along is a nice option that I appreciate when it's there in a game. And I certainly think that there's tons of people out there who are rabid for this head-to-head one versus all experience. It's something that I'm sure there's going to be an audience for you out there. But as I observe more of this industry and this hobby, I just think it's interesting the decision points that creators have to make about, do we stick with our design that we know is the core element that we think is the best, or do we broaden this in order to have more of an appeal? From what I know of Tristan, anyhow, he's the type of guy who will name a game 1066 Tears to Many Mothers. So he's like, whatever, it doesn't matter if we have a catchy name, we have the right name for this. Which was the right choice for that, because I can forget 100 game names, but I will never forget 1066 Tears to Many Mothers. I don't think Fantasy Flight Games is going to name a game 1066 Tears to Many Mothers, even if one hadn't already come out. That's not something that people sit down and think this is a marketable name. But it was the right name, and you stuck to your guns, and I have a lot of respect for that. And so,
Jack, it's interesting you mentioned, a lot of things there, but one of the things, Middle-earth Quest, the one versus many game, and I'm with you in that I was a DM all the time as a kid, so I always wanted to play as the heroes now because I missed out on all these opportunities because I was always playing as the bad guys. Mm-hmm. And with the long in-depth games like Middle-earth Quest, you'll spend the whole evening playing it, whereas with Lifeform, you'll play 2 or 3 games of it in the same amount of time.
Sure.
And the roles are so easy to pick up. You can rotate around the table really easily. So it's very different from having to be the master of all these different evil forces and all this, that, and the other. You'd literally just grab your deck of cards, you set up the game exactly the same way, and off you go. And all you're reading is a different set of symbols. So the gameplay is so swift. You literally play a card and play moves on to the next player. I mean, you do have more options than that. But the speed at which it plays, I think, takes away from that. All right, well, this is the game we're settling down with tonight. I'm going to be the bad guy for the entire thing. And afterwards, I'll either feel bad for having kicked everyone's ass or I'll feel bad for having had my ass kicked,
The theme.
So that is a point. And to your other point as well about the player count, when I did launch 1066 Tears to Many Mothers, before I launched, our retail partners said, this is a terrible idea, don't do it. No one's going to buy a medieval history card game based on an obscure English battle, and I was genuinely worried. I thought, well, is my desire to make a game that's completely different from Gloom and Killforth, is that overshadowing the business aspect of it? Will people even go for that? And then sure enough, 1066 made more money than Gloom and Killforth on Kickstarter. So I think as long as the game's there, the mechanics are tight, the narrative's interesting, I think and I hope we'll always have an audience. And given the nature of this game and the fact that I don't think anything out there plays like it, I think we're in good, safe hands with the designer. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Okay, well, I know that we're kind of short on time here for you in particular, Tristan. So I'm just going to leave with one more like production question on your part, and that's, as we're getting ready for Lifeform to come onto Kickstarter, I assume you've already booked Sir Ian home to do all of the Kickstarter video itself.
Yeah, he's definitely on the books.
Okay, perfect. I figured if you're going to have some, talking head in a video talking about the game, it might as well be the android himself. Or Bilbo, whichever one you want. Well, it's been a pleasure.
We're very close friends. He's English, so we're tight as anything.
Yeah, I assume every British person knows one another. That's just kind of my American mentality. You just are all pals over there. But I know you got to go, so I'll finish up here with Mark in the next few minutes. But it's been a pleasure speaking with you again, Tristan.
Jack, thanks so much for having me on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you too.
All right. Well, now that it's just you and I, Mark, we can just talk trash about Tristan the entire time.
Yeah, I was just going to add on Tristan's points. One thing that helps with, the Alien is slightly harder to play, but not so much like the Sauron that you've mentioned in Middle-earth Quest, which I've played. The theme helps in that it's fairly intuitive that if you're playing the Alien, well, I might not get the finer points on the first couple of playthroughs, but I generally know I should be stalking the crew and eating them, So you can play a more simple, strategy and still get through. And then as you're going through the game, learn what the other icons do, where the crew players, let's say there's 4 people playing, 3 of them are using the same deck and they're all learning, if it's their first time, they're learning their icons, together, as it were. So they see by example and they're like, oh, what does that do? Obviously, it's been play tested with a ton of people, and 99% of which I don't know. Didn't know the people before they played, and a couple of people have struggled initially with the Alien, to be honest, because it is the harder role. But you're always going to get some people struggle with a certain role and they'd prefer to have played the crew or whatever. But generally speaking, people have learned as they've gone, adapted to the circumstance, So, one thing I wanted to say, you were on about games that you'll never forget the name of. What about this one I've seen today? Sidereal Confluence, Trading and Negotiation in the Elysian Quadrant.
Yes, exactly. I saw that name and I was like, are you kidding me? Like, some of these are really far out there. But then again, it is kind of refreshing that there are all these really, obtuse names when there's a billion different mage / wizard / summoner / magician / sorcerer wars or battle.
Yeah.
There's so many interchangeable names out there. Rune is another word which I feel like has been,
they like people like that, don't they?
100 different games. And while there are some very good ones, sometimes those names are just like, oh my god, I can't keep all these games straight. There's so many of them.
I was going to mention, you were saying about, I just wanted to go back to that one versus many. When I start designing a game, I think of the advice that you get when people say write your novel, is that write the book that you want to write and read, not that you think people would want to read. I don't know if that makes any sense, in that it takes so much time and energy and passion to design a game. If I designed it backwards, as in, what do I think people would like the best, or what's going to be, what will be a trendy game to come out? Because clearly, by the time it comes out, 3 years have passed, so there'll be a new trend anyway. But I can't think like that. If I thought, well, deck building's it, or worker placement / using a roundel is in, let's do it that way. I think that's the worst way to design a game. I felt the best way to do Alien justice was to have one player play the Alien. If maybe that will, slice some of them. And also the other thing is the game doesn't have miniatures, which definitely will massively scale down people's interest these days on Kickstarter. But that's the game I wanted to design. If I wanted to design a miniatures game, I would not have designed it based on Alien, due to how much you'd have to scale back the experience. If you use miniatures, you can't really have a board with more than about 12 chambers. And even if you did, they always get overcrowded. And that's a pretty small Nostromo. our mining starship's got 80 odd rooms. If you had miniatures, there's just no way you could do it.
Right.
It would just be, I know that we'll get nitpicked over that, and people are, well, I'll replace it with miniatures when it comes out. That's fine. But I couldn't, the board is already massive, right? And that's with 80 rooms. So I've designed it for the experience that I wanted people to have. And when people have played it, not one of them has said, this would be great with miniatures. That might be because I didn't ask the question, and people are polite or what have you, and you don't know the 1,001 reasons why people don't tell you anything to your face. But that's the game it is. So, and also the other thing, we didn't want to wait any longer. It would take at least add another year on to the development if you had to have the miniatures, the molds done, and the manufacture of all of that. So what I was trying to get to was the genesis of the game. You've got to make the game you want to play, and because otherwise you never see it to the end. There's just so many other distractions in the world. Video games are so amazing now. Why would you design a game that you half thought, I'm doing this for the money or the market, when you want to design the game you want to design, don't you? So
yeah, all that sweet board gaming money that all these Kickstarters are.
Yeah, why do people think? Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Exploding kittens and that. Maybe those guys have had a right old time and bought themselves Ferraris each or something. I don't know. But for the rest of us that grind along making games that we care about and that aren't embarrassed for other people to play, there's no money in it, is there? Well, not. There is for a select elite. If you're lucky and your game goes absolutely amazing. But for the rest of us, there's no way you can give up your day job, So
right. And
it's just a fun pursuit. There's nothing quite like it. I probably prefer designing the games to playing them. They're a puzzle solving thing. The more problems that come up, the more interesting the game design becomes.
Well, then we'll have to have a game designed about game designing. That may be the next meta level step. And you can even have like buffing up your production is going on podcasts and that kind of stuff. Well, what you were saying about the designing something that you'd want to play, that really resonates with me. I'm not a game designer by any means, but I've dabbled in tons of different art forms throughout my life. And that's true about art. Like you can only really imbue something with like a piece of your soul if it's something that is already connected to it, and that's what's going to resonate with people or not, but that's okay. It's the most authentic version of something out there. And more often than not, I find that that's the way of getting people who are truly passionate about the thing that you're making. If it's just something that you make for a broad audience that isn't something that you think it is truly something that is from you, from your heart, and that you're very passionate about, then sure, people may be interested in it. They may like it, but I don't think that people will feel the personal connection like this person gets it. They understand what I want in a game. And those are going to be the diehard fans that are evangelizing for your game, that are the most passionate about it, and in the end the most supportive about it. And I think as artists, which designing games, I think it is art that you're creating something. That's what we're looking for. Is the person. I can imagine. I mean, sure the money would be nice to have more money, but as far as pure emotional feel, if there are 10 people at a convention that think that your game is the exact game that they have always been waiting for, that has got to be more satisfying than 100 people who are like, yeah, it's a pretty good game.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, I would love to talk to you more, really just in general, about you, because we talk so much about Lifeform. I really didn't get too much of a sense of some of your extended history and your passion for gaming, what led you into this and everything. And I think those are things that we'll have to hit on another time. But for now, how about we?
Sure, I'd love to come back. Who doesn't like talking about themselves?
yeah. Well, according to Tristan, not the British. But
I do. I must be different there. I could wax on about board games and games I've played for hours. So
perfect. Well, I'm looking forward to doing that. For now, when is Lifeform planning on hitting Kickstarter?
next month. I can't give you an exact date, but...
And there is a BGG page. I was looking at it a couple days ago, so people can check it out there and stay tuned.
Yeah, it's been up there years, which is both good and bad, I guess, but... it's been trawling the oceans of board gaming for so long. At least it's attracted a lot of people who just subscribe just to see, will this game, be one that's in limbo forever, or will it actually get done? But some people have been on there almost since day one. I just hope that they're not disappointed. Somebody go, I've been waiting for this for 5 years and it's a piece of trash. You're like, I couldn't have put any more, effort in. If it doesn't do what you want it to do, then I apologize. But the page has been up for a while, but we're planning on at some point in March. Can't really and not taking into consideration other Kickstarters. Otherwise, you'd be forever. We're not a studio waiting for the next superhero movie to move out of the way, or the next Avatar or something. If another game of similar ilk comes up, we'll just have to weather the storm or, ride part of his wave or something. So, it's been exciting, as all my other games have been through traditional publishers. This is the first on Kickstarter, so no doubt I'll be refreshing the page every 10 minutes to see how it's doing, So,
well, I'm looking forward to seeing it on Kickstarter. I'm really rooting for you, and I think this is an exciting approach and something that's unlike everything else that's attempted something within this genre, this field.
Well, I'm glad you think so.
I'm really looking forward to it, and it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, Mark.
Yes, I'm sorry I sound a bit croaky. Like I say, I've been pretty ill the last 3 days, so today felt the best. No, it's been great you having us on and being able to talk about it. And soon everybody shall be able to back it if they wish, or watch how the chips fall as they may. It's been a long road, that's for sure.
It'll be nice to get to the end of it.
Yeah, though the one thing that no one ever says when you're a game designer, right, is you make the game that you want to play. It's the one thing you want to play. And obviously you can play it a hell of a lot when I probably played it hundreds of times. In the last year or so, I've played it hardly at all because other people have been playing it a lot. But the thing that you want to do, once it gets in a box and it's been published, you can't suggest playing it.
Yeah, true.
You can't
I never thought about that.
You go to convention. You're not carrying your own game under your arm. That's for sure, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'd be a giant. Whoever does that is a giant, knobhead, basically.
Oh my god, yeah. I've never thought.
So,
about
and I
that.
can't. And my friends, I'm never going to suggest playing it with my actual, my close friends in our gaming group. So basically, you never get to play the game you wanted to play. It's the designer's lament. No one ever says it. I don't whether they feel the same way or they carry the game around. Hey, who fancies playing this game I designed? So it's easy when it's a prototype because people are like, yeah, all right, we'll help you, or what have you. Or I wouldn't mind trying it, but once it's in a box and it's been made, that's it. I never get to play it again.
That's awesome. That's a beautiful way of ending this. That's like writing your own music and then, actually going to hang out with friends and like, oh, I'm just going to put some music on, and you put on your own music. And they're like, what are you doing? Oh, man. That's awesome. I'm going to leave it there, Mark. That's a beautiful way
thanks,
of
Jack.
ending it.
Thanks for having us on. It's been very interesting. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. As always, the Cardboard Herald is a completely free service providing you with interviews, reviews, and recommendations. You can find all of our stuff at cardboardherald.com or check out all of our regular content on our YouTube channel. If you are interested in contributing, have some feedback, or just want your listener mail read on air, click the contact link on our site. If you enjoyed this episode on our interview feed, check out our sister podcast, TCbH Reviews, where we give you audio versions of our reviews, followed by a look behind the scenes of what went into making them. Lastly, this episode was edited and produced by Rob Conley of Ginger Cat Productions. Have a new audio project you need help with? Whether it's music or podcasting, Ginger Cat Productions can help you out. Find them at gcatproductions.com. Once again, thank you for listening. I've been Jack for the Cardboard Herald, and you keep on gaming.